This is your host, Shashank, and welcome to another episode of Shashank Redemption, an episode where every week I bring you inspiring stories, exciting guests, and thought-provoking ideas. Welcome back to another episode of Shashank Redemption, a podcast where I bring you some of the hottest founders and CEOs in the fintech, proptech, and financial services world. Today, I'm super excited about the founder of SkyStem, who is with me on the call here. Her name is Shagun Malhotra. Shagun, thank you for joining us here.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing that you're doing here. Glad to be a part of it.
Thank you. Before we get into exactly what SkyStem does, let's go back a little bit and actually talk about your experience leading up to SkyStem. So everything that you have done, you of course have a very impressive resume working at multiple different organizations. And then, of course, leading up to founding SkyStem, which I think was almost, 10, 11 years back now. So tell me what all did you do that led up to to founding SkyStem?
So my career started in audit, just like, many accountants that go the CPA route. And then I spent my remaining career in investigations, compliance, governance, internal audit, everything in that specific world. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, really want to be an entrepreneur. I love my jobs, all the variety of experiences that this kind of gives you. Mm-hmm. So I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. I mean, it ends up being something that is in that world. So it's great. But sometimes I do wonder, I wish I could have, made something like a dating app or Uber or something so everybody would understand what it is. So I spent a good amount of time there. I worked for Marriott. I worked for Freddie Mac. I worked for Accenture. And I guess this specific idea was triggered. It's probably a culmination of everything, but when the financial crisis hit, I was a consultant and working at a large financial institution, basically brought in to help them clean up some of their financial processes because it failed one of the regulatory exams. And in that experience, it was obvious that, there was spreadsheets and paper and you were counting all these accounts that they had to reconcile literally in Excel. And by the time you gave a status, it was already outdated because people are working, real time. And once the financial crisis hit, there are a lot of layoffs. I was one of the people got laid off. And it wasn't really a good time to look for a job. And while I was there, a lot of people had really kind of, nudged me and said, hey, you should build a software. And I was not techie and not interested in being an entrepreneur. My whole family has been entrepreneurs and I just see how hard it is and, why go that route? But lo and behold, I started writing the software, the process of how to build the software. And a little while later, here we are.
Yeah, more than a little while later. I think you have been at this for over a decade now. But let's talk about your experience at Freddie Mac, and the reason why I pick Freddie Mac out of the list that you have where you worked is because, of course, we get to work with Freddie Mac almost on a daily basis,
right?
Because we run a mortgage company here. So I was particularly interested in your work there, and what did you think about working there?
It's the time that I went there, it was after their accounting scandal. Mm-hmm. They'd had the $5 billion underreported earnings, and I think Fannie Mae had a similar situation. Yes. The other direction. A lot of broken controls and lapse in governance and all that. And I mean, in fact, the acting CFO, had committed suicide in 2009.
Oh, I don't remember that. Okay.
Yeah, because I was like just about leaving around that time. But because of that, they created a group called Internal Control Organization. Mm-hmm. And it was an internal audit because internal audit, goes and does testing and makes sure that all the things that they say that are there are there. The ICO was created to make sure that the things actually existed, as in, how to develop better risk management, how to have controls. And, it's huge. It spans over 5 buildings and a lot of employees. And I mean, it was a really great place to work from a human resources perspective, and how they treated you, and, the kind of hierarchy and promotions that happened. It was well run, at least in our division. And I think because it was a new division and the leader of it was, fairly young, there was a lot of vibrancy in that. And also knowing that you were able to like actually make a difference, especially coming from the place that, Freddie Mac had come from.
Yes.
It was, and, actually it's funny because I didn't even really want to work there. I'd just come back from a sabbatical and I just applied for jobs. And coming out of hospitality, which I was at before that, it's so much more glamorous and exciting, and you can actually see the properties, right? I mean, in my mind, Freddie Mac was just kind of invisible stuff that you don't get to really see. It's not really a product. But they offered such high salaries for that specific role, that it really, and I was still living in Washington, D.C. at the time. So that really kind of propelled me to be able to move to New York, which is where I live, because, to have a good standard of living in New York, you need a certain amount of money. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't a very long stint, but it was also in this specific, the focus was also controls and preventing fraud and, the scandals.
Yeah, and I hear you moving from hospitality to something as boring as mortgages. I get it.
Yeah.
I say about that my job and my industry all the time. But yeah, of course, essential part of American dream and American home ownership. You also got to do something very interesting, and you were part of an elite group of experts that judged startups in Chile, was it? And tell me more about the experience, and what parameters were you looking in terms of judging these startups? Is because a lot of our audience for this podcast could be people who are either thinking of startups or probably running in a startup right now. And it'll probably be useful for them to know that if you're sitting on the other side, like a judge who's judging some of these startups, what are they actually looking for? So if you were to talk to us about that experience, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. This was a program that they started, I think it was 2010, where Chile, and now it's actually happening all over the world in different countries. I think they got the idea from them, but they were the first, and they basically opened up their borders to allow people to come and start their companies, give them a stipend. Well, it wasn't really a stipend; it was like $50,000. But the idea was that you had to live there for 6 months, and basically to instill innovation and entrepreneurship in their culture, because Chile is really, conservative, and nobody really starts a business. And so this was the idea of the then president. And so I'd applied and got in, which I couldn't believe, because, they opened it up to the whole world. Chileans were not allowed to apply that round because they just wanted international people. So it was like going to college again, except, with all these different startups. So being there, I did have a little advantage because I had started probably, I was a little bit more advanced than most of the people there. And also I had the benefit of being in New York, which had a lot of free resources available to help you, jumpstart your business. So once that was over, and, I participated and mentored people while I was there, and kind of trying to get them to get them to the place I was without them having to recreate the wheel. Sure. So, once I left, they had already tapped into me if I could help them, nurture the next round. And I said yes. And that was different from judging. And then it became judging. So I judged for about a few years. And I also judged here in New York City Business Plan competition after I was one of the winners, when that was also around 2010, 11. So, you just get into that mode of like, you have to think about your product. So the competition, they're pretty similar. What they look for is, pretty similar. But you have to keep remembering that, right? Because it looks good on paper, but it's very easy to forget what is it that you have to keep focusing on. And, they're the obvious things. how innovative you are. How do you differentiate the product? In Chile specifically, it had to be a global product. It wasn't supposed to be like, for one community or for one
Okay.
country or something cultural. Um, what was a competitive advantage you had? And, the team skills, and do they really have synergies with each other? Because you have a lot of people who just want to start a startup, and they're friends in college, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
um and how connected the team and founder is to a bigger network. I mean, do they have people within that industry that they know? What is their assessment of the financial return on the business? I mean, and also, like, as a judge, would you recommend it to an investor? There were a lot of it was, and I really enjoyed it because you got to be a part of what the kind of like the next generation or the next cohort is coming up with, right? Ideas are just always flowing, and you end up being on the other side just saying, wow, that's smart, or that's a really good idea. But yeah, one thing I would say is, like, I think it was ideas from a percentage perspective, there were quite a few good ones. And I think the sad part was that a lot of people did not know how to articulate the idea, and
Mm.
because you have such few words, right, you cannot write an essay. And so
Yeah.
that's the hardest thing. Even, how they say that 1 minute pitch in the elevator, if you were with somebody, it's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
So it was really fun. I don't do that anymore, and I haven't judged in the last, since COVID. But it was it's always good to be kind of in the know of what's coming.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's not just teaches you how to judge other startups, but actually learn a lot from them, because especially if you're an entrepreneur yourself, or are you in that space, you're learning from other entrepreneurs who might have great ideas. Now,
Exactly.
you started ART, which I think is an acronym, ART, for accountants. Tell our audience what that is exactly and what problem does it solve.
The company is SkyStem. The product is art, and it doesn't really stand for anything because it's really grown beyond that when we
Okay.
originally. So now we just say the art of the month end close. So
Okay.
art is a month end close and reconciliation solution. Every company has to close their books and do reconciliation before reporting their final numbers.
Yes.
Um, Private companies have a little bit more, lax controls around this, but public companies have a lot of scrutiny and accountability. So, it's a definite benefit for them if they were to automate. In the old days, it was like the green bar paper, when you were like doing accounting, and then it moved on to Excel and printing and, creating binders. And then it moved on to shared drives and electronic signatures, in Adobe. And
Yep.
so we are now like the next level, which is automating the workflow, having the product has the audit trails in there. You have all your supporting documentation as to why a balance is what it is. You have your closing checklist, all the different tasks different departments have to do, all set up. They show up whenever they're supposed to, according to the schedule that you have. We have the balance sheet flux analysis, which allows you to compare, last month to this month or last year to this year, kind of monitoring the flux in your balance sheet accounts. And if there is, based on certain rules and algorithm, it just shows up and, assigns you the task. We have the P&L variance, which is, basically against budget, what your revenue and expenses were, what you budgeted and what they turned out to be, and what the variance is and why it's there. So it's like this little suite of things that people, accounting teams do at the end of the month,
Mhm.
to make sure everything is okay. They're reporting, and sometimes different parts of the processes actually catch different errors. So the best thing is to have all of them. And it was being done in Excel, and had the issue, Excel has issues such as version control, fat fingering a number, formulaic problems. In fact, Freddie Mac's issue was because of Excel.
Oh,
um,
wow. Okay.
yeah. I mean, not only, but it was like one of the
Yes, for
things
sure.
because you have these big models, right? I mean, basically, Excel is kind of like a software. The only difference
Correct.
is that the humanly manipulated software all the time. It's not controlled. Like, nobody can go into our software and, although people have asked us, can we change the date? It's like, no, it's funny. Um, so yeah, and the good thing about our software is that we can tap on to integrate with any ERP. It's for, I mean, most the companies that start to need something like this probably starts around 50 to 100 million
Mm-hmm.
onwards. Where they are at a place where they would need a little bit more sophisticated and organized way of doing their month-end close. And any industry, anywhere in the world, everybody has to, close their books.
Yep.
So that's what
And
we do.
and you have been SkyStem, as we talked about before, has been there for over a decade now. What have been some of the memorable highlights for you on this journey, which is, and you can talk about the earliest the struggles. I know that those are not always fun, but they might still be memorable. But
Yeah.
and so yeah, anything that comes to your mind, it'll be great to hear about your entrepreneurial journey. But how did it evolve, and where you are, and what are some of the highlights?
When I started, I know this kind of when you haven't done it at all and you don't have a partner and you're not in tech, that fear factor of how are you ever going to make this a reality is really tough. And I remember going to India to find the developers the first round,
Mhm.
and I interviewed a few different companies, and obviously, just by demographics, most of the developers were men. And while I was doing the interviewing of these 5 companies, I nobody, I had a question, nobody talked. There wasn't one peep out of the people. And I was like, does this company really want the business? Because it is basically, selling. And out of the 5, then I think it was the fourth company that I went to. Then there was this one guy who got up, and I mean, mind you that this is accounting, right? So I'm explaining them on the board like how it would work, and kind of drawing like a wireframe on a whiteboard. And I'm just thinking nobody understands what I'm talking about, because this is not just a consumer based product. It's technical. You have to be an accountant. And this guy just stands up and he comes up to the board and he starts like making some marks and tells me that this is wrong because this
Mhm.
wouldn't tie and this is wrong. And I'm looking at him like, oh my God, he's right. It was. So, and he's not with us now, but he's the person who originally built the first version of this product. And it was just, so exciting. And I really was very lucky to find somebody like that, because I think, just because you're a developer doesn't necessarily, give you the skill set to kind of think outside the box and see something that you've never seen before. You're just good at developing and you understand code. But I got lucky with having somebody who understand the process. And of course, things like our first customer, it took us 1 year of calling before we got our first customer, because we are private, we're
Wow.
not VC, we don't have VC money, we haven't taken any outside investor money. So it's just been, ourselves, our customers are basically fund our growth. So that first customer was amazing. And then I remember going to one of our customers' accounting department, to their office to meet the controller. And when I walked into it was about 30 or 40 people in that company, in the accounting team, and everybody had our product up, because it was month end. And when I walked in and I saw, because our product is very colorful, it's very obvious, you can't miss it. It's not like gray like Oracle, or like a lot of a lot of business software are just like super dull. Ours is very bright. So I was just so thrilled, just to see that everybody's like on our product. So yeah.
So yeah, I identify with the initial struggle is because I guess we have kind of similar story. We haven't taken any VC or outside funding, and when I got in the business, I don't have technical background, but we wanted to create something which is tech forward. So understanding how the coders and the programmers talk was definitely a struggle to begin with. So
Yes.
and
So
for us, in terms of client acquisition was a similar challenge because we got in the business in 2008. And if you're trying to start a mortgage business in 2008, then good luck
Oh
with
God, yeah.
with getting clients. So yeah, everything that you mentioned really identified with our own journey here. And you're right. I mean, SkyStem is very colorful for an accounting product. I think I was on the website
Yeah.
yesterday, and for something which, I mean, mortgages are boring, but so is accounting. And so to
Yeah.
keep it colorful and make it interesting is definitely, I think you've done a great job of
Yeah.
that. Talking about making it interesting, let's talk about one thing that comes up for entrepreneurs all the time, which is especially as you get more established. I mean, in the early years, I know there's struggle. There is a struggle in terms of spending way more time into the business than that probably you would want. But as the business becomes a little bit more established, how do you manage work life balance? Again, you don't just like you. I don't have a co-founder or partner or whatever, and so it seems like everything comes to you, everything comes to your desk. How do you manage that, Shagun, in terms of just balancing between what you have to do at work and what you have to do in your personal life?
Well, I got really lucky. Initially, I did not have somebody, but very shortly thereafter, I found like my work soulmate. Her name is Nancy, and she is definitely helps make work-life balance happen. Um, so that was a big boon for me. But
Sure.
my initial 10 years of work was so brutal. And even though I loved it, it was just not sustainable for a healthy lifestyle. People start out like that, and I guess sometimes you just get stuck in it. And then I started this company, and I was alone for a couple of years, and that was really brutal. And then as I started having, hiring people and having employees, I just did not want that culture. I just did not
Mm,
want to impede on their weekends. I did not want to
sure.
impede on my weekend, and really focused on what is really urgent, right? Because when I look back at some of the bigger companies, it was urgent, and I think you have to learn it and learn how to say no, because it really isn't urgent, right? And um, so now they have unlimited vacation, here. There's a lot of flexibility as long as people can get their work done, deadlines are met, everything is, great. So it's very, very important for me and for the team. And I think that's one of the things that the team really enjoys about working here.
Yeah, I think it starts from the top in terms of how you want to drive the work-life balance. Because if I'm emailing you on a Saturday expecting a return, expecting you to respond, then even if someone does not respond, or even if you don't expect them to respond, just the fact that you're sending emails on a weekend or after hours, that kind of puts pressure on them to be able to respond. And so if you're driving that with your own personal experience, I think that definitely helps.
Yeah.
Now, you are a member of Forbes Finance Council, just like I am. What has been your experience? A lot of people, again, who listen to the show are part of financial services industry. You don't have to endorse it because, of course, none of us have any stake in Forbes itself. But is membership like this, or being part of a group like this, uh, do you suggest from your own experience for other people in the industry to be part of, whether it's Forbes or something else?
I think these kind of groups are really beneficial. I think you just have to have the time. We used to be in forums like this for other, especially banking, because we have a good chunk of our portfolio are banking and credit unions, and we've got referrals from there. People are talking about our product on there. Not only marketing, but you're also like building the network. I just haven't. I think you really have to have the time to do it. And so I've written some articles for Forbes Council.
Mhm.
I'm trying to participate. I think we joined maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, and I keep trying to, wanting to make the extra time to reach out, meet people, in a virtual sense.
Sure.
So I think it's a great idea. Every forum has its own, kind of culture and benefits. But I honestly, I haven't taken advantage of how many things they actually provide you, even like the personal benefits that you get being an executive member.
You do, and it's the funny thing is that it's I have it on my task list, and I've had it for a few months now to be more connected to other members and just basically have more conversation. But you're right, it played well. It can have a significant impact on just the kind of network that you're building, and of course, hopefully there is business that comes out of that as well. Now, my last question, which is where I end all my podcast interviews with Shagun, is I would like you to recommend a couple of books that have had huge impact on you, and it can be personally or professionally. Doesn't really matter what kind of an impact, but really a couple of books that have stuck out, something that probably you go back and read it again when you need to. But what will be two or three books that you will recommend to our audience here?
So I'm gonna go. I have three recommendations. I'm gonna go in chronology. When I read them. So, Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. I read that in high school.
Mm,
It is a controversial book. It
it
really,
is.
uh, it's about self-interest, individualism against collectivism. The fierce belief in capitalism, and I think it really it was kind of like the book I grew up on, like what I thought was the way you should be. And then, as you go through life, you tweak it a little bit because, she's very drastic
Yes.
in her writing, but it definitely made an impact on me. And nearly, anybody who I got close to, I would like make them read this book. I said, this is the only one that you have to read. So that was something, like a personal development thing.
Okay.
When I started the company, I read The Founder's Dilemma by Noah Wasserman.
Yes.
It's just amazing because it was, you're torn all the time, and it's such a perfect title. I just couldn't put it down. It was just like, you're going through everything that's happening in that book. And, no matter what kind of company you're trying to build, I know this is leaning more towards tech, but the logic in there, I think, is so wise. And it really, gives you a different perspective, or if you have no idea, then it lets you, kind of have an idea on what to do or what to think about. And the best thing about the book is it doesn't really tell you what to do. It tells you how to think, it gives you both sides. And I really enjoyed that. And what I'm currently reading, which I am only 1/3 of the way through, is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Yes. Love that
Um,
book.
I know, but it's just like, puts all that you've learned like upside down. Like,
Yes.
I just want to see the next chapter. And I'm like, what are you going to tell us to do now? It's like, crush your enemy. And
Yes.
it's very manipulative, but I understand what it's trying to do. But there isn't one chapter, it seems, that is like soft, like everything is about like, you have to really think about how you're moving, with every step. It's like a chess game. And I love the historic, how he goes into some historic events that have proven the point that he's trying to make it, these mini chapters or these 48 laws. So those are my three for now.
Yeah, it's almost like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, is not an exact parallel, but yeah, Robert Greene book is not for everyone. It is pretty direct, as you said, and talks about things that most authors or speakers won't talk about. But Robert, I think Greene is very direct in that book, and not everyone will like it, but some really, I think, practical and brutal advice there. So your three books are really, it kind of covers a huge gamut of different subjects, and very interesting that you don't have like three business books. If you look at Robert Greene's book, I mean, yes, it talks about laws of power, but it's not a business book. I mean, that can be for anything. And Ayn Rand's book, of course, is not a business book. But then Founder's Dilemma is a book that every founder should probably read, because it does drive to the core of what a founder is and what kind of thought process that they should have. So brilliant recommendations, Shagun.
Yeah.
And appreciate you being here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about Shagun Malhotra, she, as I said, is the founder of SkyStem. The website for their company is skystem.com. And of course, you can connect directly with Shagun on either her LinkedIn profile, or if you're a member of Forbes Finance Council, like the both of us are, of course, you can connect her on that platform as well. Shagun, thank you again for taking time out and recording this for our audience. I'm sure they will find a lot of value from it. Thank you. It was fun. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Shashank Redemption with your host, Shashank Shikhar. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and review us. And check out shashankredemption.com to connect with me.